I just want to know what went on. And, you know, John, I first contacted you after you had created a video about Frank Muth, a U.S. Army general who was the head of a program that was intended to train the Saudi Air National Guard. Give us a little background on Muth, if you could.
Sure. So it's actually called the Saudi Arabian National Guard. So it's SANG, and it's not Air National Guard. I don't think it's Air National Guard. I think it's just Saudi Arabian National Guard, SANG.
Okay.
And the U.S. Army has a program called the OPM, Office of Program Management for SANG. And it's been in existence for many, many years. And effectively, it's the branch of the Army that teaches our allies how to use the weaponry systems that our manufacturing companies make. So if they buy something from Lockheed or, you know, Hughes or,
Boeing.
you know, Martin Merrick, yeah, right, Boeing. So they're buying these systems from these companies, and then the Army teaches our allies how to use it, and we charge them for that. So it's a revenue generating operation. It's like a sales operation.
Well, it's
And
part
what
of the
they're
military
selling-
industrial complex, isn't it?
Right. There you go. There you go. So what we're doing is the U.S. Army sells training and ongoing this and that as part of this operation. So this Major General, then two-star General Frank Muth was running an operation with over 200 people, and they are servicing the Saudi Arabian National Guard, basically teaching them how to use the stuff that we sell them. So they own these helicopters, and that's how, you know, that's how the Saudi theory developed. The Saudi hypothesis came from, you know, you're looking for means, motive, and opportunity. The FBI and the LVMPD did not deliver a motive, right? They both said we can't figure out the motive. But what I challenged was the opportunity. I looked at Stephen Paddock in room 32-135, and along with Shepard Ambellis, who was really the first to break it, said the window in 32-135 isn't broken. And the officer who goes up to the window and pulls the curtain back isn't mentioned in the FIT report as being part of the team. So his name is Brett Brosnahan.
And John, how were you able to get that video? Is that?
So this is part of the crowdsourcing. So there's a bunch of guys who've been going down to the Metro on a weekly basis and getting the releases and then posting them up on YouTube for the rest of the investigative community.
The people that don't want the truth of these types of things coming out recognize that when, you know, 12,000 or 79,000 or hundreds of thousands of people put their thoughts, their resources, their access to random video clips together, we've assembled such an unbelievably powerful tool for solving crimes, revealing evidence, and getting everyone thinking about all these different factors that it is virtually unstoppable, and so they're trying to stop it.
Well, it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
All right. So this is history in the making, and that's not hyperbole.
I agree.
And what I mean by that is what we're living through right now, and by we, I'm talking about you, me, Joe, the rest of this investigative community, the people who survived through this. What we're going through right now is this crowdsourcing of justice, this crowdsourcing of discovery, where the evidence is being provided by the people who were there, the victims, and it's being investigated by civilians.
Right.
This has never when has this ever happened?
Well, it started, I think, with 9/11, but, you know, you got to remember, 9/11 was, what, 16 years prior to this. Not every single person in New York City had a 4K video camera in their pocket in the way they did in 2017 at this concert. There have been so many videos that have been surfacing.
That's right.
And that's what allows you to do things like triangulate. You know, we're no longer spitting in the wind. We are closing in on a theory. I mean, this is the way it works, right, John? I mean, this is how crimes get solved. People look at the evidence and start to try to put a picture together and start to try to build a narrative. And I appreciate that there are elements. You said most of the videos are evidence-based, and I believe what you mean by that is there are times where you begin to try to flesh out a hypothesis, and it does necessitate traveling down the road of speculation to some extent. We've
Absolutely.
got to
Absolutely,
look at
yes.
the evidence.
Absolutely.
And
Who also, there's a woman who goes up to the cop and says, was it a helicopter? Well, what would make her say that? So we've got a bunch of people who saw through the fog of war, who believe that the helicopters were shooting at them or that it was some sort of an aircraft. We've got people who said for a moment they thought it was a drone shooting at them. And again, that's normalcy bias, because you can't imagine that somebody in a helicopter is shouldering a gun and trying to shoot you in the face. It's heinous. It's heinous, right? And so then you have to ask, who in the world would do that? So when you talk about videos that I've made that have some speculation, one of my things that I did in my career in the past, I'm a bit of a statistics buff. I like statistics and studied it in school. And so the probability that the number of women versus the number of men that were killed, if it was at random, meaning if you're shooting a bump stock rifle into a crowd of
just
people.
spraying, yeah.
Right. At night, right? People are running. It's a crowd of people, 20,000 people, give or take, 16,000, 20,000, whatever.
Right.
You're shooting into a crowd with a bump stock, spraying at night. You can't really target, right? So the results should be random, regardless of whether people are huddled.
But
or
you've
women
now presented police body-worn camera footage where the police officers themselves are remarking how strange it seems, the number of headshots.
Yeah.
Correct.
Tremendous precision.
I fell out of my chair when I saw that video.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So John has put together a body of work that assembles basically the most compelling evidence based on video evidence, photographic evidence, eyewitness testimony. Now, John, you have put together even more evidence supporting this Saudi Arabia. Basically, what we're getting at is there's a civil war going on in the Saudi Arabian royal family. Everyone knows that.
Correct.
And take us through some more of the evidence that addresses this notion and why you came to think this a long time ago.
When I realized that there was this Saudi National Guard training thing about 150 miles away with a bunch of helicopters, it's like, well, we know these guys have got rogue
what's the name of that
folks.
That air base? Nellis?
It's the Boeing.
Nellis.
No, well, Nellis is the air base, but that's not where the helicopters were. The helicopters are at the Boeing Mesa, Arizona helicopter plant.
Oh, that's
Got
good.
it. Right.
Yeah. So the irony there is, guess who works at the Boeing Mesa helicopter plant is Douglas Haig.
Oh,
Douglas Haig
really?
is the guy that So he's the guy that was selling fancy bullets. So how do we get So how do we end up with that guy who works at this facility? And this, by the way, this is one secret facility, boy.
This is Boeing in Mesa, Arizona. We can see. Right there.
Yeah. This is where they make the good stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So
you made the connection with the Saudi Air National Guard, and you've backed it up with all of these things. The video from Frank Muth. Talk to us for a minute, if you could, John, about the Saudi Arabian holiday of Ashura and how that ties into this.
Well, I was curious if October 1st, 2017 had any significance, if the date itself was meaningful. And I started to look into that, and I said, all right, is it meaningful on any other calendars besides the Gregorian, Judeo-Christian calendar? And lo and behold, I find that October 1st, 2017 is Ashura. And Ashura in Islam is the equivalent of, I think, the Jewish holiday of Passover. Basically, it's the celebration of Exodus, of Moses leading the
Jewish
Israelites
slaves out of Egypt.
Right, exactly. And so
So this is sort of like Passover from the point of view of the people who are pissed off about it.
Well, no. In fact, I think what you'll find is that the Muslim folks who are believers, Muslim believers, and Jewish believers, there's a big overlap in the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
I think both religions share the Old Testament. So all of this stuff having to do with Ashura and Passover, I think it's almost identical except for when they celebrate it and the names of the various stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the celebration of Moses taking the Israelites out of Egypt. Right. And so the symbology of, we've got the Sphinx and we've got the Luxor pyramid. And this is happening on Ashura, which is the holiday that celebrates the Exodus from Egypt. To me, that's like, really, that's a pretty big coincidence.
I agree with that.
Right.
And it was interesting to see, whoops, let me get this into a position where we can look at it properly here. So people were standing there in the concert, basking right in the glow of this pyramid, right in front of this obelisk.
Right in front of it.
Right in front of the Sphinx. Tremendous symbology right here of this blood sacrifice on the holy day of Ashura. Talk to us for a moment, John, about this history of violence on the day of Ashura.
So it turns out that Ashura is a fairly violent holiday. And if we scroll down a bit, you'll see some dates where again and again and again,
1994, bomb. 2004, bomb. 2008, clashes between Iraqi troops and a Shia cult. 2009, explosion of a bomb. 2010, detention of 200 Shia Muslims at Shop House. We got 2011, explosion of a bomb. 2011, suicide attack. 2015, 3 explosions. So it's not, I think that someone like Quinn Michaels would say once is random, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times is basically a tradition.
So it's a violent holiday. It's a violent holiday, and the holiday's significance is it's about the Exodus from Egypt, and so I think the Sphinx and the Pyramid of Giza is, pretty.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
absolutely.
So what I'm saying is this was funded by the same families that funded September 11th. The families, the people that were in the 28 pages, that all the redaction that's in there. This is them 16 years later, and their next generation. Their sons are now in their 40s.
You want to talk about a pattern?
And factions, Joe. Obviously, we've got the royals, but then we've got their Confederates. And of course, there was a huge dust-up made over the murder of alleged journalist Jamal Khashoggi, pictured here, of course, in the 1980s with Afghan jihadis of the Mujahideen. The guy's holding an RPG, and he's rolling with Al-Walid bin Talal. He's not a journalist. He's the son of one of the most famous arms dealers, prominent Saudi. This guy's up to no good. And I think that his murder was somehow linked to what happened on October 1st in Las Vegas, Joe.
Unbelievable. So the same family that funded 9/11 funded this.
Families, multiple
factions within the Saudi royal family. And we're not saying that 9/11 was completely a Saudi operation. Again, I think it's quite clear from multiple points of evidence that 9/11 was one of the most sophisticated operations ever carried out. Yes, there were elements of Israeli Mossad. There were elements of the CIA. There were elements of Saudi intelligence. I'm convinced George Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Robert Mueller, all of these different people were involved covering it up providing the necessary technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes sense that this much secrecy surrounds what went on in Las Vegas, Joe, because if the people of the United States learned that a program created by the U.S. Army to train Saudi Arabia in the United States resulted in a rogue splinter operation where Saudi military personnel and Saudi helicopters fired on U.S. civilians in a U.S. city, that would be devastating to the national psyche. That would be devastating to the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States. And of course, that is a critical relationship because of this wicked, unsustainable system of the petrodollar. But look, the fact is, if the relationship with Saudi Arabia exploded in the way the World Trade Center did on September 11th, we basically would be facing the utter collapse of the U.S. economy. So I think it's fair to say that Donald Trump as the president has been served, I'm sorry to say this, but a shit sandwich. And he's trying to put enough mayonnaise on it that people can not taste the saltiness.